Hello friends, please like and subscribe to the channel and enjoy the stories. Chapter 1. The Whisper of Clocks. In the heart of bustling Edinburgh, amidst its labyrinth of cobblestone streets and towering Gothic spires, 24-year-old Isla McGregor had always lived life at the pace of a metronome. She worked as a clockmaker's apprentice in her father's dimly lit workshop on Victoria Street, her days measured by the steady tick of timepieces and the murmur of tourists wandering the historic lanes. But Isla wasn't ordinary, not in her mind at least. From the moment she could walk, she had a peculiar gift. She could hear the whispers of clocks. Each timepiece murmured stories of the moments it had seen, fragments of conversations, snapshots of emotions. To most, it was the stuff of fairy tales. To her, it was both a blessing and a curse. One misty morning in late autumn, as the city yawned awake under a pale sun, Isla was fitting a new escapement into a vintage pocket watch when a stranger entered the shop. He wasn't just any stranger. His presence felt like an anomaly in time itself, his sharp features and effortless grace belonging to an era long past. He wore a faded green trench coat, his dark eyes alive with curiosity as they swept the cluttered workshop. "Good morning," he greeted, his voice like the low hum of a well-tuned pendulum. "Are you Isla?" She nodded, her fingers still working deftly on the watch. "Who's asking?" "My name's Gabriel," he said, placing an antique clock on the counter. It was exquisite, an Art Nouveau masterpiece with gilded accents and an intricate glass face. "I was told you're the best person to fix this." Isla looked up, momentarily distracted. "Where did you find this?" she asked, brushing her auburn hair behind her ear. The clock seemed to radiate a strange warmth. "It's been in my family for generations," Gabriel replied. "It stopped working last month, and I can't seem to figure out why." As Isla inspected the clock, its whispers grew louder in her mind, a cacophony of laughter, arguments, and music, all from decades ago. But beneath the usual hum, something felt wrong. The clock didn't just hold memories, it seemed alive, thrumming with an energy that made her pulse quicken. "Did anything unusual happen when it stopped?" she asked cautiously. Gabriel hesitated. "I'm not sure. My grandmother used to say this clock is cursed." "Cursed?" Isla raised an eyebrow. "That's quite the claim." Gabriel leaned in, lowering his voice. "She believed it binds people together, lovers specifically. She used to say that as long as it ticks, the bond remains strong. But if it stops..." The rest of his words were swallowed by the rhythmic ticking that suddenly echoed through the shop. The clock, though motionless in her hands, seemed to pulse in her grip. Startled, she dropped it onto the counter, where it landed with a hollow clunk. "You felt that too?" Gabriel asked, his expression tense. Before Isla could respond, the clock's glass face shattered outward. A faint golden mist seeped from its center, swirling between them like a living entity. Isla staggered back, shielding her face as the mist coalesced into a shape, two glowing rings, intertwined and spinning slowly. "What in the world?" Isla whispered, her voice trembling. Gabriel reached out instinctively, his fingers brushing against one of the golden rings. As he did, a searing warmth enveloped Isla's wrist. She looked down to find an identical glowing ring etched onto her skin, shimmering faintly. "This isn't possible," she muttered, trying to rub it off. But the ring didn't fade. Instead, it pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Gabriel held up his own hand, revealing a matching mark. "It's the clock," he said grimly. "It's chosen us." "Chosen us for what?" Isla demanded, panic rising in her chest. Gabriel's eyes darkened. "I don't know, but if the stories are true, we might be bound together, for better or worse." And as the shattered clock lay between them, its whispers grew louder, drowning out the world with one haunting phrase: "Time always claims its lovers." Chapter 2. The Threads of Time. The golden rings on their skin shimmered faintly, an unspoken tether between Isla and Gabriel. They stood frozen, their eyes locked in a silent exchange, until a sharp knock at the workshop door shattered the moment. "Isla, are you in there?" called an elderly voice. It was Fergus MacGregor, her father, returning from his morning errands. "Just a moment," Isla shouted, hastily wrapping her wrist with a scrap of cloth. She turned to Gabriel, her voice low and urgent. "Don't say anything about this. Not yet." Gabriel nodded, stepping aside as Isla opened the door. Fergus entered, his stout frame wrapped in a weathered coat, his keen eyes scanning the room. "Ah, a customer," he said cheerily, noting Gabriel. "What brings you here, lad?" "An old clock," Gabriel replied smoothly, gesturing to the broken timepiece on the counter. It needed a touch of magic. Isla was kind enough to take a look. Good, good. Fergus gave an approving nod. "You won't find a finer craftswoman in all of Scotland." He turned to Isla. "I'll be in the back if you need me." As soon as he disappeared behind the curtain, Isla grabbed Gabriel's arm. "We need to figure out what's happening. Follow me." She led him through the narrow alleyways of Edinburgh, the crisp autumn air biting at their faces. They descended into the depths of the city, where the modern gave way to the ancient. Beneath the streets lay the forgotten closes, a network of abandoned tenements and hidden tunnels. Isla had discovered them as a child, a secret world to escape into when the weight of the whispers became too much. "This is where I go to think," Illa explained as they entered a low-ceilinged chamber lit by the golden glow of her lantern. Dust motes danced in the air, and the faint scent of damp stone filled the space. Gabriel placed the broken clock on a worn wooden table. "What do we do with this?" Ila hesitated. The clock was unlike anything she had encountered. It hummed faintly, even in its damaged state, as if its essence hadn't fully left. "There's something alive in it," she said finally. "The whispers, they're not just memories, they're people." "People?" Gabriel frowned. "You're saying the clock traps souls?" "Not traps," Ila corrected, tracing a finger along the edge of the clock's shattered face. "Preserves. Moments of connection, moments of love. It's like a vessel for emotions." Gabriel leaned closer, his expression unreadable. "But why us? Why did it choose us?" The golden marks on their wrists pulsed faintly, as if in response to the question. Isla stared at hers, the glow unnerving yet strangely comforting. "Maybe it needs us to fix something," she murmured. "Or someone." Before Gabriel could respond, the air grew colder, and a faint sound echoed through the chamber. A woman's voice, distant and mournful. "Help me." The voice sent a shiver down Isla's spine. She exchanged a glance with Gabriel, who looked equally unsettled. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Gabriel nodded, his jaw tightening. "It came from the clock." Ayla stepped closer, her breath visible in the chilled air. "Who's there?" she asked cautiously. The voice grew stronger, carrying a note of desperation. "Find the other, before time unravels." "The other what?" Ayla demanded, her frustration mounting. But the voice faded, leaving only the steady hum of the clock. Gabriel exhaled sharply. "This is madness." "It's more than that," Ayla said, her mind racing. "If what she said is true, then this isn't just about us. There's something, or someone out there tied to this clock. And if we don't find them, something terrible might happen." Gabriel rubbed his temple, clearly grappling with the weight of it all. "Do you have any idea where to start?" Ayla thought for a moment, then snapped her fingers. "The Whispering Archive." "The what?" "It's a hidden library beneath Greyfriar Cemetery," Ayla explained. "It's where old records, artifacts, and forgotten stories are kept. If there's anything about this clock's origins, we'll find it there." Gabriel hesitated, then nodded. "Lead the way." As they left the chamber, the golden marks on their wrists pulsed again, a subtle reminder of the bond they shared. Isla couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of something extraordinary, or the harbinger of their undoing? Unbeknownst to them, the shattered clock began to mend itself. The glass face reassembled piece by piece, its gears clicking softly into place. By the time the room fell silent, the clock ticked once more, its whispers growing louder. Time waits for no one, and love waits for time. Chapter 3. The Whispering Archive. The Whispering Archive was not a place easily found. Tucked beneath the crumbling tombstones of Greyfriar Cemetery, it was said to hold secrets too dangerous for the surface world. Legends swirled around its existence. Some claimed it was built by a secretive order of scholars. Others whispered it was cursed, its knowledge guarded by shadows that moved when no one was looking. Isla had only been there twice before, and each time she had felt the weight of its mysteries pressing on her chest. Tonight was no different. The cemetery was cloaked in fog, the silhouettes of ancient headstones rising like jagged teeth. Gabriel followed closely, his footsteps muffled by the damp earth. "Are you sure this place is safe?" he asked, his voice low. "No," Isla replied simply. but it's necessary. They reached a crumbling mausoleum near the edge of the cemetery, its iron gate rusted and ajar. Isla pulled a small key from her pocket, a relic passed down through her family for generations, and slid it into a hidden slot near the base of the gate. The lock clicked, and the ground beneath their feet rumbled softly as a hidden door revealed itself, leading down into the earth. The air grew colder as they descended the spiral staircase, their lantern casting flickering shadows on the stone walls. The stairs opened into a cavernous chamber, lined with towering shelves, each filled with ancient tomes, scrolls, and artifacts. The air buzzed faintly, as if the knowledge stored here was alive and restless. Gabriel whistled softly. "This is incredible." "It's overwhelming, is what it is," Isla said, scanning the rows of books. "We're looking for anything about cursed clocks, bonds, or time unraveling," Gabriel finished, his gaze settling on an ornately carved lectern in the center of the room. "That feels like a good place to start." The lectern held an enormous leather-bound tome, its pages yellowed with age. Isla approached cautiously, brushing off a thin layer of dust before opening it. The text was written in a strange looping script that shimmered faintly in the lantern light. "What language is that?" Gabriel asked, peering over her shoulder. "It's Old Scots," Isla murmured. "My mother taught me enough to get by." She ran her finger along the lines, translating aloud. "In the days of shadow and light, the timekeeper forged clocks to anchor the threads of love and fate. Each clock bore a bond, unbreakable, eternal. Yet should the clock falter, so too would the bond, and the threads of time would fray." Gabriel frowned. "Threads of time? That sounds apocalyptic." "It gets worse," Isla said, her brow furrowing as she continued reading. "If the bond is severed, only the other may mend it. To find the other, follow the marks and the whispers, for they guide the way. But beware the shadow, for it seeks to consume all bonds and unravel time itself." "The other," Gabriel muttered, glancing at the golden mark on his wrist. "It's connected to this, isn't it?" Isla nodded. "It must be. But who or what the other is, I have no idea." Before they could speculate further, a soft rustling sound echoed through the chamber. Isla froze, her hand tightening on the book. Gabriel instinctively stepped in front of her, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "Yes," Isla replied, her voice barely audible. The rustling grew louder, and then, from the darkness between the shelves, a figure emerged. It was cloaked in black, its face obscured by a hood. The only visible feature was its eyes, two orbs of flickering golden light that burned like dying stars. "The shadow!" Isla breathed, her blood turning cold. The figure raised a skeletal hand, and the temperature in the room plummeted. The lantern flickered wildly before going out, plunging them into darkness. "Run!" Isla shouted, grabbing Gabriel's arm. They sprinted through the maze of shelves, the shadow's presence pressing down on them like an invisible weight. Its raspy voice echoed in their minds, chilling and relentless. "The bond cannot be mended. Time is mine." As they reached the staircase, Isla turned back for a split second and saw the shadow extend its hand toward the lectern. The book they had been reading disintegrated into ash, its knowledge lost forever. They burst out into the night, gasping for air as the mausoleum door slammed shut behind them. For a moment, the cemetery was silent, the fog swirling peacefully as if nothing had happened. Gabriel doubled over, his hands on his knees. "What the hell was that?" "The shadow," Isla said, clutching her chest. "It's what the book warned about. It's trying to destroy the bonds and us." Gabriel straightened, his expression hardening. "Then we need to find the other. Fast." Isla looked down at the golden mark on her wrist, its glow faint but steady. The whispers in her mind grew louder, more insistent. For the first time, she felt not fear but resolve. "Then let's stop running," she said, meeting Gabriel's gaze. "It's time to fight back." Chapter 4. The Compass of Whispers. The fog clung to Isla and Gabriel like a second skin as they made their way back to the workshop. Neither spoke, the silence between them heavy with questions they couldn't yet answer. The shadow's presence lingered in their minds, a cold, oppressive weight that refused to lift. When they reached the workshop, Isla immediately locked the door behind them, drawing the curtains. "We can't stay in the open anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "It knows where we are." Gabriel dropped into a chair, rubbing his temples. So what do we do? We've lost the book, and the only clue we have is this. He held up his wrist, the golden ring still faintly glowing. Isla paced the room, her mind racing. The marks and the whispers. The book said they guide the way. Maybe we've been thinking about this wrong. Instead of looking for answers in books, we need to listen to what the clock is trying to tell us. Gabriel glanced at the broken timepiece on the counter. You mean the whispers? You can hear them, right? Yes, Isla said, hesitating, but it's not always clear. The whispers are fragments, pieces of moments. They don't make sense until they do. Gabriel stood, his expression serious. Then we'll make them make sense. If the clock is connected to us, maybe I can hear them too. Isla frowned. It doesn't work like that. It's... Let me try, Gabriel interrupted. What do we have to lose? Reluctantly, Isla handed him the clock. As soon as his fingers brushed its surface, the whispers surged in her mind, louder, more insistent than ever before. But something was different this time. Do you hear it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. I feel it. It's like a pull, a direction. A compass, Isla murmured, realization dawning. The clock isn't just a vessel, it's a guide. Gabriel closed his eyes, focusing. It's pointing south, toward the coast. The coast? Isla said, grabbing her coat. That's hours away. Do we have a choice? Gabriel asked, already heading for the door. The journey to the coast was harrowing. They traveled under the cover of darkness, their every step shadowed by the sense of being watched. The golden marks on their wrists grew brighter the closer they came to their destination, the whispers in Isla's mind crescendoing into a symphony of fragmented voices. By the time they reached the cliffs overlooking the sea, dawn was beginning to break. The horizon was painted in shades of gold and crimson, the waves below crashing against the rocks with relentless force. There, Gabriel said, pointing to a weathered stone cottage perched precariously near the edge of the cliff. Its windows were dark, its roof sagging under the weight of time. As they approached, the whispers shifted, coalescing into a single voice, a woman's voice, soft but urgent. Find the key. Unlock the past. Isla stopped in her tracks. Did you hear that? Gabriel shook his head. No. What did it say? Find the key, Isla repeated, her heart pounding. It's inside. The door to the cottage creaked open with little resistance. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of salt water. The furniture was sparse, the walls adorned with faded photographs and maps. At the center of the room stood a table, and on it lay an old, rusted box. This has to be it, Isla said, her hands trembling as she reached for the box. The golden ring on her wrist pulsed, and the whispers surged again, louder than ever. Gabriel placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. Together, he said. Nodding, Isla opened the box. Inside was a single item, a small, intricately carved key, its metal glowing faintly with the same golden light as their marks. As soon as she touched it, the room shifted. The walls seemed to ripple, the air growing heavy with energy, and then a figure appeared. It was a woman, her form translucent, her face serene but sorrowful. Her golden eyes mirrored the glow of the key. You've come, she said, her voice echoing with both relief and urgency. You must hurry. The shadow grows stronger. Who are you? Isla asked, her voice barely steady. The woman's gaze softened. I am the other, she said simply, the keeper of the bond, and you are its protectors. Gabriel stepped forward. What does that mean? What are we supposed to do? The other extended a hand, and the golden key floated toward them. The bond between you is the anchor. The shadow seeks to sever it, to unravel time itself. You must strengthen it before it is too late. Strengthen it how? Isla demanded. The other smiled faintly, a bittersweet expression. By trusting in it, by trusting in each other. Before they could ask more, the cottage began to tremble. The shadow's voice boomed through the air, a cacophony of rage and hunger. You cannot stop me. Time belongs to the void. The other's form flickered, her light dimming. Take the key, she urged. Find the clock of eternity. It is your only chance. And then she was gone, leaving Isla and Gabriel clutching the glowing key as the shadow's presence closed in around them. Chapter 5. The Clock of Eternity. The cottage trembled as the shadow's voice filled the air, its presence pressing down on Isla and Gabriel like a storm ready to swallow them whole. The golden key in Isla's hand burned with an otherworldly heat, its glow casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. "We need to get out of here," Gabriel shouted, grabbing Isla's arm. The door slammed shut with a deafening bang, and the windows darkened as if night itself had seeped into the glass. The shadow's form began to coalesce in the center of the room, a swirling mass of darkness, with glowing eyes that burned like molten gold. "You cannot escape," it hissed. Its voice 1,000 whispers rolled into one. "The bond is weak. Time unravels. Give me the key and I will grant you peace." "Run!" Isla yelled, pulling Gabriel toward the back of the cottage. They stumbled into a narrow hallway that led to a trapdoor hidden beneath a threadbare rug. "Help me," Isla urged, and together they heaved the door open. A damp, narrow tunnel stretched downward, its air heavy with the scent of earth and salt water. Without hesitation, they descended, slamming the trapdoor shut behind them. The tunnel was dark and winding, lit only by the faint glow of the key in Isla's hand. The whispers in her mind had become sharper, more urgent, guiding their steps. "Do you even know where this leads?" Gabriel asked, his voice echoing in the confined space. "No," Isla admitted, her breathing labored. "But the key, it's pulling me forward. We don't have another choice." Behind them, the air grew colder, and a low growl reverberated through the tunnel. The shadow was following. "We need to move faster," Gabriel urged, his hand brushing against the wall for balance as they picked up their pace. The tunnel opened abruptly into a vast cavern, its ceiling disappearing into darkness. In the center stood an enormous clock, its frame crafted from gleaming silver, its face a swirling vortex of light and shadow. The clock of eternity. Isla and Gabriel stood in awe, the key in Isla's hand vibrating with increasing intensity. "This is it," she whispered. The whispers in her mind rose to a deafening crescendo as if the clock itself was alive and calling to them. "Do you know what to do?" Gabriel asked, his eyes darting between the clock and the tunnel entrance. I think the key fits here," Isla said, pointing to a small, key-shaped slot at the center of the clock's base. As she stepped forward, the shadow burst into the cavern, its form expanding to fill the space. Its golden eyes locked onto Isla, and its voice thundered, "You will not deny me." The ground beneath them shook as the shadow advanced. Gabriel grabbed a jagged piece of stone from the cavern floor and stepped in front of Isla. "Do it! I'll hold it off." "What?" "No," Isla protested, panic rising in her chest. "Just go," Gabriel shouted, his voice firm. With trembling hands, Isla inserted the key into the clock's slot. The moment it connected, the clock of eternity roared to life. The swirling vortex within its face began to spin faster, casting beams of golden light that sliced through the darkness. The shadow recoiled, its form flickering. "No, the bond must break." Gabriel lunged at the shadow, swinging the stone with all his strength. It connected, and for a brief moment the shadow's form fractured, but it quickly reformed, throwing Gabriel aside like a rag doll. "Gabriel!" Isla screamed, her heart wrenching as he hit the cavern wall with a sickening thud. The key burned hotter in its slot, and the golden marks on Isla's wrist flared to life. She felt the bond between her and Gabriel like a lifeline, a tether that pulsed with energy. "Trust in the bond," the other's voice echoed in her mind. Summoning every ounce of courage, Isla placed her hands on the clock's spinning face. The golden light surged through her, filling her with a warmth that pushed back the shadow's cold. She closed her eyes, focusing on the bond, on Gabriel, on the connection they shared. The shadow howled in rage, its form disintegrating as the light from the clock consumed it. "This is not the end," it screamed, its voice fading as its presence dissolved into nothingness. The cavern fell silent. Isla collapsed to her knees, her energy spent. The clock of eternity slowed its spinning, its light dimming to a gentle glow. "Gabriel!" she cried, scrambling toward him. He was slumped against the wall, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. But as Isla reached him, his eyes fluttered open, and he managed a weak smile. "Did we do it?" "Yes," Isla said, tears streaming down her face. "We did." The clock emitted a soft chime, and the golden marks on their wrists faded, leaving only faint scars. "What happens now?" Gabriel asked, his voice barely audible. Isla looked back at the clock, its presence still powerful but no longer threatening. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think we've saved the bond." Gabriel reached for her hand, his grip weak but steady. "Then it was worth it." As the first rays of dawn broke through the cavern's cracks, Ella felt a sense of peace wash over her. The bond between them, forged in the fires of time and danger, was unbreakable. But deep in the shadows of the cavern, a faint whisper lingered, a promise and a warning. The shadow always returns. Chapter 6. Threads of Forever. The faint whisper lingered in Isla's mind as they emerged from the cavern, their steps heavy but their hearts steady. The morning sun cast golden light across the cliffs, the sea below calm after the storm of the night. For the first time in days, the weight of the shadow was gone, though its warning echoed like a distant storm cloud. Isla and Gabriel sat on a flat rock near the edge of the cliff, the clock of eternity's key still faintly warm in Isla's palm. Gabriel winced as he touched the cut on his forehead, but his smile was genuine. "We survived," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Barely," Isla replied, her gaze distant. She turned the key over in her hand, its intricate carvings glowing faintly in the sunlight. "But the shadow, it's not truly gone. It said it would return." Gabriel exhaled deeply. "Let it try. We'll be ready." His words carried confidence, but Isla couldn't ignore the chill that ran down her spine. The shadow's presence, its voice, had left a mark on her soul deeper than the scars on her wrist. "Do you think the clock is safe now?" Gabriel asked, nodding toward the cavern's entrance, where the clock of eternity hummed softly, its light barely visible. "For now," Isla said. "The bond is intact. The clock is still. But time is fragile, Gabriel. It always has been." He reached for her hand, his touch grounding her. "So are we," he said, his voice low. "But we're still here." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw not just the boy she had met by accident or fate, but someone she had come to trust with her life. Someone who had stood by her when the world itself seemed to unravel. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For not running. For staying." Gabriel chuckled. "I didn't exactly have a choice. You kind of dragged me into this." Isla laughed for the first time in days, the sound light and unburdened. "You could have left, but you didn't." His expression grew serious. "Neither did you." They sat in silence for a moment, the waves crashing below a comforting rhythm. Isla slipped the key into her pocket and leaned back, letting the sunlight warm her face. "What now?" Gabriel asked. "Now." Isla paused, searching for the answer. "We live. We protect the clock. We wait. And if the shadow comes back," Isla turned to him, her eyes steady, "then we fight." "Together," Gabriel smiled. "Together." As the sun climbed higher, the golden scars on their wrists glimmered faintly in the light, a quiet reminder of the bond they had fought so hard to protect. In the distance, the whispers of time had quieted, their restless energy replaced by a soft, rhythmic hum. The shadow was gone, for now, but the bond they shared was a thread woven into the fabric of time itself, strong enough to withstand even the darkest forces. And as they sat together on the cliff's edge, Isla and Gabriel knew that no matter what came next, they were no longer alone. Epilogue. A thread unraveled. Far beneath the earth, in the depths of a cavern untouched by light, a faint shadow stirred. It curled around the remnants of the clock of eternity's energy, its presence a whisper that grew stronger with each passing moment. Time was patient, and so was the shadow.